everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Public History and Arts. My name is Myriam, her name is Nada, and today we have a special guest, Khalid Albaih. I'm so happy that we finally managed to get Khalid to speak to us. We've been chasing him for a few months. I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because I really wanted this conversation to happen, and I'm so glad that we managed to make this happen. A lot of people are going to be so happy learning about your work, but also having this discussion on how comic art can also be a medium for speaking on history for the people whose history has been written by other other people throughout time.
Absolutely.
Khalid, I'm gonna start by introducing you to people who don't know you, and then we're gonna start with the questions. I'll have one, Nada will have one. We'll try to stay within the limit of our time. If we don't, that's okay because we like to talk a lot and we like to do very fruitful discussions. And it just happens that we have the perfect guest to do so. Thank you so much for joining us today, Khalid.
Thank you for having me, and I'm sorry, but thank you for having me, and thank you for chasing me. That was good. Thank you very much.
Good. I'm
My
so
fault.
glad you're
Totally
saying
my bad.
this because I'm still chasing other people. Maybe then they'll watch this and be like, oh, this is okay. Okay, so Khalid Albaih is a Romanian-born artist, Qatari-raised. He's an award-winning Sudanese artist based between Oslo and Doha. This is a lot of capitals and a lot of countries. Hala, we'll speak about this in a bit. He has founded influential platforms including Fada, Sudan Artist Fund, and Sudan Art and Design Library, and KhartoonMag.com, which is an independent political cartoon magazine. His work has been commissioned by organizations such as Amnesty International and has been exhibited at Documenta and many museums around the world. He is this year's Georgetown Qatar's Artist in Residence. Albaih's writing has been featured in leading publications such as CNN, The Guardian, and Al Jazeera, where he has a show discussing Sudan. He's also the author of Khartoon, and he edited Sudan Retold, which is a collection of works by 31 artists exploring the history and future of Sudan. I named a lot of things and a lot of initiatives. We're going to try and put these in the links of the YouTube description when we post this online for people to be able to see your work and also follow up on the gazillion things that you do all at once. Khalid, كيفك? How are you?
Well, alhamdulillah. It's as good as we can be in these crazy times. I mean, our country is torn apart, and we're watching a live stream genocide and the takeover of Zionism and Christian Zionism over the world. So yeah, it's going. It's definitely going.
Well, this is going to sound a bit weird, but I'm glad we're still managing to operate in these circumstances. And I really feel like this gives us, like, it gives us a lot of feelings to deal with from feeling like nobody hears you, what your truth is not spoken about, but it also gives you drive to continue doing the work that you do. And maybe from that point, we could start the discussion on your work as a comic artist. You're many things at once. And I was saying in the introduction, like you've been born somewhere, raised somewhere, you're originally from somewhere, your parents are from somewhere. And then you also do a lot. You're a journalist, you're a reporter, you're a comic artist, you're a writer. What we want to focus on today is your work through comic art, illustration art. Why is it that you chose this medium to speak about a lot of the political and socio-economical living that we experience every day? Is it because the medium is what you felt was closer to the public, or like it speaks the majority's voice, or it's understood by people, or is it because of like other reasons?
So I always liked art, and I always liked comics, and comics was my introduction to art. And through comics, I got introduced to political cartoons. And political cartoons kind of bridge that gap between comics, which is, mostly a fantasy world, or, at the time, there weren't many kind of like journalistic graphic novels and stuff like that. So it was mostly superhero stuff or fantasy stuff. And so political cartooning kind of, brought that to reality. And I found how political cartooning kind of spoke to the people and became the voice of the people, even in a time where, there was a lot of censorship, just like now. And but still political cartoonists kind of maneuvered around many rules and editors and red lines and so on. And I found that extremely creative and extremely powerful and extremely brave to kind of know how to do that because there's a very thin line between being a propagandist and being a political cartoonist or a political artist. So I discovered that at a young age, and from there, I kind of tried to build my own. But that's really the connection to political cartooning and comics is basically that it connected a lot of things that I wanted to work on, or I respected, and I thought it's the best way to get my voice out there, which is my main thing. So for me, it was how can I talk about what I want to talk about in a way that people will welcome it, because when I say I'm a political cartoonist, people smile, so that's a very good kind of introduction. And at the same time, it's kind of like a cross between street art, because one of the first things that you saw in the Arab Spring and in the walls of whether it's Benghazi or whether it's Al Qahira, or whether it's Yemen or Syria or in Sudan or Bahrain, in Tunis, it was all cartoons. It was cartoons of these leaders, and that just kind of broke the fear, you know. So it was a cross between street art, pop culture as well, a lot of pop culture references, things that you can wear on a t-shirt, things that look cool, and funny, and it's about satire. And so that for me it was the perfect medium, and it was fast because we were at the beginning of the age of the internet that everything is about now, and it was just fast doodling, and you can put it up online on whatever your blog or your Flickr or High Five or Facebook or whatever, So it was around that time that it was just everything just kind of connected into political cartooning, um, in that way, in a new way, not in the way that I grew up with, where, it has to be a magazine and it's in the last page and so it was and didn't have an editor. So the internet also helped that. So it was kind of the style, the way of distribution and everything kind of ended up being that.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think like you said it beautifully. I've had this conversation with a musician, a Palestinian musician, a couple of
Mm.
months ago, and I was telling him, "Why did you choose to speak about the history of Palestine through music?" And he was like,
Mm.
"This is a medium that I felt comfortable with when like words like couldn't express what I was feeling, but also this
Yeah.
is a medium that gets through censorship. Like if you were to write what you draw, none of it would have been like would have had the chance to be published. But then when you put it in
Mm.
a cartoon, then you can find like the tricks where it gets on the edge of someone, but it also like the editor is not gonna say no, no for this. And it's really about navigating those fine lines and getting the message across and also being able to literally be open and to being received by the widest public. Like sometimes people are not very comfortable reading an article that's like a bazillion words, and it's
Yeah.
easier for them to get just on one image and it says it all. Yeah.
Which kind of became the problem now, actually,
Mhm.
because I mean, for me, with where what the internet became now is kind of a cartoon of what it used to be, right? And so is the news. So before I saw my job as kind of someone that, kind of pushes down the gazillion words, as you said, of the article or of the news or of the history or whatever, and try to put it in one frame, which is a very hard thing to do. Um, but you do it creatively, right? But now everything is like that. Now the news is like, oh, the history of Sudan in 1 minute, or the history of blah 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 in like 30 seconds. And I heard this somewhere. I think it was I don't know who actually said it, but it was like, news now is whatever can fit between two ads. I think it was Noam Chomsky. So it's really I really don't know how beneficial cartoons are now, or political cartoons now because all news is cartoons now.
Yeah. I
That's a tough one.
I don't know how to go from there. Let's go Qatar versus Dubai.
Okay, I will try to like give a follow-up question based on like Miriam's question, but also on your answer, like your work in Khartoon and like your other published cartoons. Your work kind of operates across temporal and political registers, whether to tell untold histories or to comment on current affairs or to
Mm,
envision and think of possible futures. And
mm.
my question was like, given like how critical all these different tasks are, how do you navigate like how distinctive yet overlapping these roles are for you as an artist?
Yeah, and you mean between running the magazine and doing my own work and writing and all of that stuff?
I mean, between like trying to tell like the untold
Mm,
histories of
mm,
Sudan, but at the
mm.
same time you're trying to be to keep up with what is happening on daily
Wallahi,
basis.
yeah, yeah. That's a very important question, and I'm trying to find the answer to it. And it's hard. It's really, really hard because things, it's always about now. It's always about the now. And we grew up with the internet, so everything is about now. Everything's about, putting out, going viral, like this is about what's going on now. If something is about half an hour ago, it's done. It's not trending anymore. The hashtag is gone. You can't, what are you talking about, right? So it took a while for me to kind of think about I'm part of the problem if I'm doing that. And I should slow down and I should think about how we got here. And because it's the internet is like you're in a hamster wheel, right? You're just running the whole day because it's never nothing ends anymore. Nothing ends. It just you can scroll forever. Everything you can read forever. Anything, even if you ChatGPT will never end. Like any conversation, it will never be like, oh, this is perfect, you're good to go. Nothing is like that. And even wars don't end. Like this, anything that starts never ends now. And I think this is a huge part of it, is that we need to think about how we got here and how this, how is this like scaling up of everything happened, right? So I decided, and I think that was I think this was around COVID actually, which was one of the good things about COVID, is like it kind of like gave us a minute to be like, what the hell happened? And for me, I just decided that I'm making myself sick and I'm not thinking straight because I'm just thinking about now and what am I going to do about what happened now. So I decided to kind of think about it's about quality, not quantity, and think about how I use the internet, not let the internet use me or let the platforms use me. And I mean, it's not really working because I got shadow banned and I, like because if you don't push enough or your stuff out there, you're just gonna be replaced with like a gazillion other voices that are doing way more, they're being more active and bringing more viewers to the platforms and stuff like that. So you just end up being out of the circle, um, which is also problematic because you want to be in this, you want to talk about it, right? You want to have your work out there. So it made me think about what do I want to talk about? What am I adding? Am I adding anything? Um, how am I going to say anything different than this? Do I need to say anything? why do I need to say anything? So it really made me kind of like try to think about Sudan and retelling Sudan and where all of that came from and how do we, how do we think about the future? Because, if you don't know how we got here, and this is kind of the issue with everything, right? Like the whole world now thinks, or, most of the people that you argue with now think that, oh, October 7th, right? Everything started on October 7th. No, it didn't, right? Sudan, oh, this war. Not true. The whole region is like that. So I think, if we talk about history, I think it's a key to understand how we really got here. But the problem is, again, who wrote this history? How do we where are our voices in this history? So I'm very interested in that, and I read a lot about history, and I try to read a lot about the voices that were independent and definitely not Western, but Western is good as well because it also tells you a different side of the story. So I just try to read all sides of the story and pause and think about what to do about now by looking at then, I guess.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and like I agree with you. COVID was like the right moment for us to like slow down a bit. Like since
Mm,
we were all forced to slow down a bit, we realized how crazy fast we are engineered to be. Like our
mm,
our daily lives are like unnecessarily fast, and we're basically running from one task to another without having any time to reflect or think about like لماذا نحن هنا? What is
بالظبط.
happening and why are we doing this? So yeah, like situating yourself between where it all started and where we're aiming to go, or what we are like hoping to achieve, and like relating this to the present moment. It's not an easy task, because
Yeah,
I feel like the system around us is not supporting this kind of behavior. Like
yeah,
you're basically sold for all these platforms to consume. And when you say, let's stop and reflect, and where we came from, and where do we want to go, and do we even need this new iPhone 17? It doesn't really benefit the system, and obviously it's not encouraged. It's very difficult. I'll pass
yeah.
it to Miriam. I can whine about this forever.
I'm just gonna say we're not advertising the new iPhone. I'm gonna cut this in the editing. We hate iPhones. Uh, maybe moving from that, focusing a bit more on the retelling part. So we're talking about
Yeah.
you going back in the past,
Mm,
looking at those moments and retelling the story.
mm,
I'm interested in knowing, are you more leaning towards retelling what's misinterpreted? So, what somebody else said that makes no sense in our history through our voice, through our lived experience? Or is it more uncovering stuff that are silenced or hidden? Is it like you go dig in the past and go like, oh, nobody spoke about this. Let's bring it back. Or is it, oh, what the hell did they say? This makes no sense.
mm,
Let me
mm.
bring up the perspective of the person who lived through this.
Okay, so this started with the idea that I want to write or do a graphic novel about history, right? And the history of Sudan, in particular. And because, there's a lot of things that I have to, introduce Sudan all the time, yani, to whether it's Arabs or whether it's, you know, even our closest neighbors, yani, in Egypt, yani. We used to be one country, and that's all they know, that we used to be one country for the longest time. It's this need, and as you said, I moved around quite a lot, and I just have to introduce Sudan. I have to introduce myself all the time, and I know Sudan because I was interested. I had the resources around me from my family and so on to kind of know more things about how we got here and more historical things and so on. Um, but uh, it also made me think about maybe that's the issue in Sudan. Maybe that is the problem, right? That I'm telling my history, right? And the issue in Sudan is, and kind of part of why this war is happening right now, is that there's many histories, there's many places, but everything is concentrated in Khartoum, in the middle, in the north, whatever, and everything else is kind of like a character of what happened here, for a gazillion years. So I was like, okay, why don't I open it up and kind of like ask other people, other illustrators, other comic books writers or whatever, to like work with me, write their own version of history, right? How did they, how do they see history? What interests them? And maybe we can talk about, like events that interest them, because there was a lot of small events that happen in this area that we know as Sudan now. Uh, that are pretty interesting, historical history-wise, not only for us, for the whole world. I mean, there was a research suggesting that every human being in the world has DNA from this area now called Sudan, or the first battlefield in the world was, it happened in Sudan. The first actually house, I think, was is in Sudan. So it's all of these, it's all of this like small kind of trivia things, right? That just to get people interested to know more. And because we don't have, there's not a lot of things that we can be proud of. Not a lot of people know anything about us. We don't know anything about us, and we were kind of like raised to be one thing and one thing only, right? So, and then I was like, okay, so why only comic artists? Why don't I bring any creative to talk about history or the future of Sudan? And in a way that showcase whatever they're interested in. And that was my project. And then I worked with the Goethe Institute, with Larissa Foreman at the time, and we're still working together now, 9 years later, to collect these stories and work with artists that tell their own stories. So it wasn't me that I was collecting stories. It was them trying to highlight whatever they're interested in. And I think this is the most beautiful thing about the book or the books now. Whether it's the first edition or now the second or the 1.5 edition is that it's the people that are interested. And we just work on kind of editing and working with them on what is interesting, right, for them. But a lot of people, like for example, and a lot of people, they look at me and they're like, oh, I don't do anything about politics. I don't really understand a lot of things about politics. And I was like, it's not about politics. This is about history, right? So from there, I was like, okay, so where are you from? Which area in Sudan are you from? What are you interested in? What did your grandmother tell you, right? Like, is there anything that interests you in that kind? And from there, we kind of started the workshop, and we had a history professor with us who helped us a lot. So and we have really incredible, interesting stories about Sudan from different mediums, from music to recipes to photography projects, and we kind of housed all these like small projects that kind of grew later to kind of be their own thing.
That's beautiful. And it really speaks on a lot of work that we do as public historians. Is also learning how to do co-production, because
Mm,
in the mind of academics and historians, like the general consensus is it's a top-down approach. I'm telling
mm,
you the
mm,
history.
mm.
Whereas when you're starting bottom up, you come to people and you're like, what's your perspective?
Yes.
What is it that you know that I don't? And how can we bring all of this together in a book that's called Sudan Retold? And it makes
Mm.
so much sense for it to be in one place from different perspectives. But it also takes, as you said, it takes a lot of mastery to be able to bring these voices in, not to repeat something, but also to make it interesting for everyone who's reading it. And
Yeah.
I also remember, like, I think it was a couple, I don't know if it's a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, when there was this big headline saying Sudan is the war of nothing. and then the continent replied to
Yeah.
it about Sudan is the war of everything, and then every
Yeah.
writer from Sudan contributed.
Yeah.
And like we need more of these initiatives. We need more
Absolutely.
voices, more diversity, bringing more perspectives. Because again, Sudan is not one thing, but when the story is told by someone else, it's usually one story that fits everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to build up on like the topic of Sudan and your fantastic work, Khalid. And like you as a Sudanese artist, journalist, reporter, do you think of your medium, whether like writing or drawing or cartoon or like something else, like on
Mm.
the subject of Sudan, to be some sort of like a future archive, to recuperate what is currently being erased from Sudan's history and from the people of Sudan? And if so, how do you envision the this archive to be stored and preserved and shared, like given like the political
Yeah.
climate at the
I mean,
moment?
when I first started the project, I wanted a resource. I wanted to create a resource. I wanted to create something collectible for people to have something about Sudan, because I grew up in a diaspora. So there was not really a lot of references um, to read about. Like something international, something that other people would be interested in, and so on. So this is how I imagined this project to be. But after the war, and I mean, it kind of became a totally different approach now, because there we lost most of our archive. Like we lost the Sudanese cartoons uh, archives. We lost more than 100,000 artifacts from the museum, right? And no one cares. Like this was a headline for, like, I don't know, 2 days, and then khalas, gone, right? This is the history of humanity, and it's gone. And the UNESCO is trying to do things, and museum workers in Sudan are like they are heroes really of what they're trying to do. Some people are documenting and archiving things with their mobile phones, and there's such good projects like Sudan Memory and so on that are supporting these individuals. So it's really, Sudan Retold, I think, is it's part of that archive. And now there's a lot of projects, photographic projects, a lot of these things that are happening to try to document how Sudan looked like, and how we got here, and the history, and so on. But there's so many things lost. And how do I see it in the future? I really don't know. I mean, for me, it's I work with what I have, and I try to collaborate with many people as possible to kind of make the reach bigger and bigger. Because if we don't care about us, I don't think anyone else will. And that's kind of what's happening right now. And a lot of people see the catastrophe that happened to the museum in Khartoum, and it's okay. This is a war crime. This is an absolutely war crime. If this happened in any Western city, this would have been, this would have been the highlight of this. Like, but nothing happened when it was in Sudan. Nothing happened when it was in Iraq. Nothing happened when they tried to do it in Tahrir Square, right? And I know Iraqis. Like, I remember, after the invasion of Baghdad, and the trying to when they had ransacked the museum and everything, people were crying. Like, Iraqis will never do that, you know? So it is, you would think it's intentional, really. And it is a cycle that our history is stolen from us, because we were always told that, we're not worth it. We're not human, we're subhuman, right? So it's when you don't find the resources to tell your kids to be proud of themselves. How would they be proud of themselves? If they look in TV, all they see is, oh, you're the terrorists, you're the murderers, you're black, you're this, you're that, and the whole industry is made to make you feel less. And sadly, we can't counter that with anything that's worth it, really. Anything that makes you stand up tall and say, no, no, we're not like that. How do you convince yourself, right, that no, I'm not like that, if you don't see it? And that's the problem, right? So I hope that the book, um, and everyone that worked in it is part of retelling that and reinforcing the fact that no, we were here, we did things, we were part of history, we are the history of this world, right? So, and it's not about now. It's not about now. And it's also thinking about how we got here, right? And it's part of all of that, right? But we need to really think about that. And I hope this book is part of it.
I I mean, I've seen in the past couple of years, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of voices from Sudan reclaiming intangible cultural heritage practices, doing oral history interviews, speaking about the history as it's been told by the people who lived it and who knew it. And I
Mm,
think all of this is really encouraging for the people who would like to continue down this path, but also it gives hope for the future generation that even if things get lost, we still have something. But we also need to be very pragmatic about things. The scale of the destruction is so big, and the funding for these initiatives is so small that your reach versus the
mm,
other matter of fact on the ground
mm,
is
mm.
like really disproportional. And this is where it becomes really difficult because then you cannot stop and pause and think. Then you feel like you need to do something all the time.
Yeah.
And it wears you out, like individually,
Yes.
it wears you out. And as a group, it wears you out. You come to a point you're like, why am I doing more than I could all the time? You feel responsible for all of this. Um, yeah, and it's a question that we need to sit with, but also to think about about all of this
But
for
it's
us
it's
in
it's
the
it's
region, because it's also
yeah.
something.
It's also about, the I think the funding is a huge part of it. And the fact that we have billionaires in the region, billionaires in our countries that don't think about that. And part of the whole idea with resources that I started or I wanted to start a arts and design library, because when I was working on Sudan Retold, the first one, I couldn't find any references. I couldn't find any books to show people in the workshop, right? I couldn't find any comics. So I brought in my own comics. I think more than 100 or 150 comics in Gotha Institute in Khartoum, housed in a little corner. That was, it was the comic corner. That was kind of the project that I wanted to kind of expand. I was like, this is amazing, but how many people will come to Gotha, have the
Mm.
privilege to come to Gotha in the center of Khartoum and to see comics, right? Even though they're in Arabic and all of that, but we need to take them up. So I decided, okay, I want to do the library, and we wanted to do a mobile library. And at the same time, it was the revolution that happened. I was like, all right, great, amazing. So we're gonna start to do this. I went to meet people from the new Ministry of Culture, and I told them about the project. Like, yeah, okay, no problem. We don't have money right now, but we can give you a building. I was like, all right, the building is great. And then COVID happened, everything shut down, right? And after that, it was like, all right, okay, you know what? We're gonna do a mobile library. So we do the competition. We designed the mobile library. We had like the winning competition was a rickshaw, a tuk-tuk, and we designed it as a library. I think we had, I don't know, like more than 400 books or something shipped in. We had a team of 8 people working on it. And every time I go to funders, whether international or whether in Sudan, and they'll be like, oh, during the revolution, they're like, now it's time of the revolution. We kind of think, it needs to be about policy. All the money is going through policy. And then COVID happened, like, oh, funding now all goes to health. This needs to go to health. And then after the revolution, they're like, it's the situation is a mess now. We don't know what's gonna happen. And they're like, do people really need the library now? I'm like, yeah, people need a library right now. Why do you go back to London or whatever and you get a library? Why don't we get a library? Why do you think we don't deserve that? It was just so selfish. It was extreme, but also it's selfish from Sudanese people as well, because I took this file and I went to a lot of people, right? A lot of businessmen. And they're like, like, I don't know, like, how is this beneficial to what we do? It just, we don't understand the importance of having, just for people to see things, right? Because it's if you don't see things, you don't anticipate, like you don't have an imagination well enough, right, for you to imagine a better future, right, or to see a better future, or that's why sci-fi doesn't exist in the or doesn't exist as much in Arab history. But we had one of the best, one of the first comic books, I guess, like the Shahnameh in Iran, or the whatever, Alf Layla wa Layla and all of these things, right? So it's giving the capacity to see these things and build on it, and look at other artists' work and stuff like that is not available. There's small initiatives of libraries around Khartoum, made by the neighborhood committees, which are incredible, incredible. And these things have been happening since my mom's generation, and they exchange books and they do these things, and it's reading is in Sudan, and one of the main things that happened, I remember before the revolution, was these activists made this street book festival. It's called Mafroush, you know and it was at the end, they were all arrested and the thing was confiscated and all of that, right? But this is how dangerous having knowledge around for everyone to share is, whether it's about art or whether about anything else. But my project was about art, and by the time I got to make the project, and we designed 4 rickshaws and we had the team and everything, 2 days before we were supposed to launch, the war happened. Restaurant, the factory was hit. We lost everything, you know? And I'm still trying to bring it back until today. And I get the same questions again. Do we really need a library right now? You know? It's incredible. It's really incredible. But it's our fault, and it's our businessmen's fault, because they don't see that we are worth it.
Yeah, and I think like every time we have these conversations with artists and practitioners, it always comes back to funding,
Yeah.
because the arts and culture sector depends heavily on funding, and funding is always politicized in a way. And like what's so upsetting, I'm not going to say sad, it's upsetting when you go to seek funding for such a project, say a library, and then
Yeah.
they put you versus humanitarian aid on the same pedestal, and they go like, you choose who do you think deserves our money now, and then
Yeah.
you're put in a position where you have to prioritize where the money goes, instead of saying like we deserve both equally in the same
Yeah.
directions. Like I'm
Yeah.
not going to be the one who's going to say no, it's okay if people die and don't get food as long as the library is there. Like they put you in this position because
Yeah.
of their lack of interest and their lack of like the basic understanding that all of this comes together. This is what makes humanity. I don't only need to live off of water and food. I also need my books and my knowledge. And it's a systemic thing, and it's something that they're aware of. It's not like they're not aware of. But it's so upsetting when they put you in this situation and go like, no, you're not a priority right now, like other people
Absolutely.
are waiting in line. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm reading, and it's the other way around as well, because I'm reading this novel now called Dungala by
Mm.
Idris Ali, is a the Nubian, Egyptian, Sudanese author, and he talks about التهجير القسري لأهل النوبة. And in many areas he mentions, like, aren't why didn't you save us? You saved the temples and you saved the symbol. Why didn't you save us? You gave farmers a dry land on top of a mountain, right?
Mm.
But you spent all these billions of dollars on this. Two things can go together, and this is exactly what he said. So it's really interesting as well, looking at the on how long this has been going on.
Mm. Okay, so maybe this gives us also a bit to reflect on, and this brings my last question into context.
Yeah.
For us, artists and practitioners working from the global south and being from the global south, we usually use art as a medium of resistance, whichever way you want to interpret resistance. And I think there also comes a lot of a lot of heavy meaning into what we do, But sometimes we're also like, we get this feedback from people where it's like, I mean, it's not time for art. Now is not the time. I mean, we have other things, and how do you navigate these conversations of whether art is a means of resistance or whether it's just like a luxury? Like, oh, you're scribbling, yeah, good for you. How do you go about this?
I do what I have to do. I just do it. I don't care what people think. And because I know at the end of the day, this is something that when they see, they'll be very proud of, and it will end up being the highlight of what they're doing. It's like, all everything that is people are proud of now from thousands of years is art. This is what lasts at the end of the day. And that's our memory. And that's why the first thing that explodes, pun intended, during the revolutions is art, street art, colors and all over the city. And the first thing that gets deleted in a counter revolution is the art, because they want to make you forget that this ever happened, right? So I just continue doing what I'm doing, and I hope I get to continue doing what I'm doing uh, now, because I think it's a much scary time, actually. Yeah, and we're always used to um, dictatorships. We're always used to censorship. But we there were always allies and people that kind of supported and believed in a better way forward. But now we're stuck between dictators and dictators, extremists and extremists.
And look at me naively thinking the last question is going to open up on hopeful messages.
Yeah.
I
I
was
see
like, okay,
hope dying in your eyes, Miriam.
it was really
Sorry.
good when he says, I do what I do, and in a million years, everybody's going to remember art. I'm like, yes. And then he goes like, I don't know what we are going to do now. And I'm like, no,
Yeah. I'm a political cartoonist, man. I'm a realist,
and I get it. And it's also like, it's also like there's a lot of dimensions to what we're dealing with that we don't know what to do with. Like the algorithms that are fighting off our work, taking it off of platforms, literally making it disappear as if it never existed. And then there's the usual thing, what we're used to seeing, which is like as you said, the dictator is gonna dictate, and then we're gonna be like, fine, we'll hide it, and then we'll bring it back. But all of this coming together with everything that's going on in our present day, like I really feel like it's there's so much happening in the present that we're not even able to process how to move forward or what's the best solution. We're just like slapping ourselves into doors and going like, oh nope, not this door, another door.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot. Please
You know,
end
I
this
think
with a hopeful message.
the
Someone help.
problem is, Miriam, you said like looking for the best solution, and I think this is like your mistake. Like we're just looking for a solution. It doesn't have to be the best solution, but something to get us out of where we are stuck. Like I think our standards now are much lower than they used to be. So we'd be satisfied with whichever solution that presents itself. I'm
I
sorry.
think I think we just need to creatively think creatively about how do we do this, and we think about the main source of this. It's not the algorithms that are shutting us down. It's the people that make the algorithms. It's not the platforms that are shutting us down. It's the people that make the platforms. It's not AI that's going to delete our history. It's the people that are making AI. So we need to make our platforms. We need to create a space for ourselves so we can debate and we can talk and we can meet. And I think it's very important for people to meet and think outside their circle and think about, how do I solve my problem? I think it's about solving a problem that we all have, right? And think about solidarity. I think that's the most important part here, is that how do we how do we work with each other? And if we don't do that, and this is exactly what is being pushed right now, like all the heads of states and presidents and whatever, they're saying, look at your own country, this is not the time for art. This is the time for, food and and electricity and and we can't help them because we can't help ourselves, and it's great, yeah, okay, but we as civil society, we as journalists, we as writers, we as historians, we need to talk to each other. We really need to get out of that circle and be brave and be creative and create something. The internet is gone. We lost that. What are we gonna do now? Right? So we need to know what we're going to do now, and we need people to be brave enough to support these things. Otherwise, it's not gonna be that it's not gonna be that hopeful note you're looking for.
It's always like, I'm like, yeah, this is it. We're gonna finish with a message of solidarity, coming together and creating this space where we're actually having this conversation and more of these conversations where all of us who have shared similar goals and also shared similar problems can think creatively together. This is a solution. Don't go to the other side. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Where is the solution gonna go? Where is everybody gonna meet? How are we gonna see each other? This is what we need to think about creatively. This is the issue, and things like this are very interesting for me, and to share my time with you guys, and to think together and know you, and you know me, and we know more about Sudan and what's going on, and and it's very important.
Let's end it on this note. I'm very happy. I'm very happy that we had the time to make this conversation. And I'm very happy that we addressed some of the issues that other practitioners brought up in their conversations, because it builds up on the work that we've been doing, on the conversations that we've been having. And hopefully at some point we'll manage to get together, all of us at once, to try and find these other ways of facing what we're being like subjected to. Thank you, Khalid, for taking the time to speak, for your honesty. We're gonna try and include some of your amazing visuals in the editing. I have very basic editing skills, but I'll try to steal a few images from here and there and insert them in the video, and then we'll put some links for people to follow your work, to see the book, and to also know about your up and coming initiatives and other and other works. Thank you so much. Nada, I'm closing, but Sinte, you haven't said any word before we do bye-bye.
No, I was going to say, like, I'm very, very happy for like Miriam's stalking and insistent skills that like made it happen. Like somebody else could have like just give up, but Miriam would just like come after you until you have to appear with us in the series. And I'm very happy that this happened. I'm going to look for the book. I was trying to find like a digital edition, but there isn't, and it makes sense because it's an art book. So
not the new one, not the new one, but the old one there is.
okay, so I'm going to try to find it hopefully through Goethe in Cairo, because I really think this book like I think this is going to be like my new favorite present for everyone. Like I get obsessed with books, and I just distribute them, and I hope that like my distribution skills would benefit the book. It was fantastic talking to you, and I mean, like I understand that we wanted to end on like a hopeful note, and I think even the not very hopeful ones are still hopeful, because at least we are aware of them, and we're able to communicate them, and we have like a space to share like these fears and questions, and like it's already better than not having that. Like it's already good that we have this. So I mean, Miriam, you're good, I think. Like either way, like without cutting any sad bits, I think we're good.
This is perfect. Thank you everyone for watching. This is going to be posting in the coming few weeks on our YouTube channel for the University of Luxembourg and our other platforms. Thanks again for yet another amazing episode on Conversation. Bye.
Bye.